Right, so Raven's push in TNA is maybe a philosophical booking problem because he wasn't pushed very much at all. He was a B-show mainstay at Heat, WWF Heat. Then he goes to TNA, and he's treated like a title contender. Booking-wise, how do you sort of get over that to where it doesn't make TNA look like a C show compared to WWF Heat B show, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think what you're alluding to is with the character. His character, based on his ECW run and later his WWF run, was he is meant to be he's meant to be the antithesis, right? So the anti-hero. And when he was doing his promos in ECW, I remember thinking to myself, like, man, he's great at that. Very, very different style than mine. But each time you feel yourself being pulled into that promo, you're going to go along and waft along to all the ups and downs and twists and turns because he's just got that magnetic delivery that's going to just sort of suck you in. I think the biggest problem for me with the character is it's just not a babyface character. And when he starts to become that babyface character, like in this match, he's doing everything right, much like in the show we had several episodes ago, the Clash of Champions, when he's on there and he wrestled Scorpio. Yeah, I was thinking, I had the Mick match in my head. Watch him moving around in that, and you can see, like much like I said about Mick before, Scotty has all the basic tools, right? His positioning, his movement, he knows where to bring it up and slow it down. He's got all that. But when he came into this character in ECW, the Raven character, quote the Raven nevermore, it just really sucked you in. And there was, I always said, those most dangerous heels are the ones that can tell you that, I chopped a person's head off, but let me explain why I had to chop their head off. And at the end, you go, well, okay, it's still crazy, but I see his point. And with Raven, you could always sort of see his point. And the way he would deliver, no matter what crazy thing it was they were doing, he'd get you to, at least on that edge going, okay, I wouldn't, but I get it. And, it was so, what's the word I want to use here? It was so compelling to watch that to suddenly take that and throw it out and, okay, now you're going to be here to be the good guy. And so forget about all those crazy things I said and all those compelling talks I gave you. Now get behind me and root for me. And I think that's probably a lot of heels that yearn for that because you've heard boos for so long. You want to get that one run right here. Hooray. He doesn't, as that character doesn't work for me. A few weeks ago when you see him in the Clash of Champions match, I bought him completely as a babyface. It's like you're watching along and going, okay, this is a good match.
He was a heel in that, wasn't he? Scotty Flamingo was a heel because he was against Scorpio, who dances with kids.
Technically a heel, but if you watch him in his turning, it is like he's feeding in and he's coming back and almost making comebacks in the middle of the spots and things. But he, by the time he has the ECW run, that was so iconic that it's really hard to undo that and say we're going to suddenly make you the guy the fans are rooting for. It just, no matter how hard I'm trying, it almost looks to me like when I'm watching the match, the playback and the post delivery, the post birth, it's almost like too much of an attempt to try to push it that way. But he I guess in a nutshell, and maybe it's because I just know him too well and I was too sucked in by the original version of that character. I just can't buy him as a babyface. There's nothing he's doing wrong. If anything, he's working his ass off in that role. And the A, B, C, D, the semantics of it are all there. But he's just so indelible, that character in my head, that it's really tough for me to make that leap and say, okay, now we're going to go with it. To your point, when you try to pretend in wrestling that the other guys don't exist, Somehow just abracadabra, poof, forget everything you remember. We're now here. It's such a disservice to the fans. Yeah, it's maybe more convenient for your booking if that's the way you want to go. But I've always maintained convenient isn't necessarily good. We're only limited by this up here. So take me on a bit of a ride to get me there. Explain it to me. So why this guy should be suddenly the hero. And maybe I can buy it. But like you said, the B show in WWF then, and now suddenly
I'm going to be technical. It was E. I can't help it. I've got to.
Was it E then?
Okay. Yeah.
What year's the separation?
May 2002.
Okay,
I hate to, because I've already cut out one version of my question, which went about 14 years. I had a birthday during the anyway. I edited it out. So essentially, how do you rehab an image from you're presented as a jobber to the stars on one show, and then 2 days later you are presented as a main eventer? How do you get from A to B without basically harming your own company in the with the image in that sense? I found a good way of asking it finally, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. The short answer is you can't. I mean, you can, and then it broaches all other sorts of questions that come up to that. That's to do that and do it properly. You've got to take that character and take them on a journey before you get to the point of suddenly just plugging them in. But I think it again is this whole penchant for the industry, not just TNA, but for the entire industry to pretend, okay, like there was ECW before ECW, and now there's ECWC Common Era. So like we're before and after, and like this stuff in between didn't happen. And at that point, you're just really you're setting up the undermining of your own angle because you're expecting everybody to just somehow mass hypnosis and forget that this other thing happened. Incorporate it, use it, talking about it, but make it make sense. We tell the younger kids in the business all the time, I don't care what the moves are in between, just make it make sense. And if you do that, then the rest will fall into place. And yet when it comes to those bigger things like that, there's just this sort of waving of the magic wand, abracadabra, poof, he's here. Now he's the hero. And so we'll put this smarmy heel out there and run his mouth and put James out there to do a great promo and somehow it'll just fall into place and work. Again, when you watch the match, you can't see really anything that Raven's doing incorrectly in that role. It's just that he's got this huge shadow behind him as this character that was this just prior. And now you're trying to say, okay, just forget all that. It doesn't work. And it's lazy booking. It cheapens it. And to me, there would have been so much more compelling television to take that character on that run. Okay, here you weren't so successful. What makes you think you can be here? And take that journey before you start to plug them into that top spot. And again, shame on TNA. It's just cheap and cheesy and shortcutting it, hot shotting it, if you were. And in the final analysis, I guess like people that do that have the audacity to think to do that in a booking position. There's I always talk about these condescensions, right? There's a condescension there to the fans, but there's also an aggrandizement of your own powers as a booker. Like we could just do this and they're going to forget all that. And with all due respect, that's the NFL of our industry. So they're not going to just forget about all that. And that comes there. That's it's like, remember the old, you're too young of it, Robert Conrad, the guy, and how the West was won. They have or the Wild Wild West, rather. He would put the commercial on, go ahead, I dare you, knock it off. You're doing that to the fans. And as you know, from the fans that do this kind of thing and have really written books about the business and follow, and they come to the conventions and signings and everything. Wrestling fans have that certain segment of them have an undying love for professional wrestling, and they're going to go, okay, well, I'm just going to erase that from my memory bank and then just pick up here and go from there. It's cheesy, it's cheap, it's lazy, and it deprives the fans of what you need most. You being the promotion, you need footage, you need television content to feel that it would make sense. And by cheapening it, you just cut out 16, 20 weeks of television you could have done to get there.